Welcome to AI Home Podcast, the first podcast for real estate resources and independent living strategies for the disability community. Why? Because accessibility is home. Hi, I'm Angela Fox, blogger, author, and your host. Now, let's begin. Now for part 2 of the interview with the Wheeltor. I know you say you start out by not really advertising that you are in a wheelchair. What about now?
Now that's the brand, because when I show properties, I always get a video so people can see. Now, granted, there are a lot of properties that I am not able to get inside, but for the ones that I am able to get inside, I will shoot a video of me getting into the home, of me coming out of the home, because what I want to do is I want to show others in our situation that, hey, this is possible.
Yep. So you focus on those houses that you can actually physically show. So you actually show houses. You're not just doing the, getting the client and the research and the haggling of prices that I assume you could do by email and phone. You're also picking houses that you can wheel into literally.
Yes. And again, it all depends on the client. If a client is requesting a one-story home or ranch style home and it is stepless, then I'll go inside. Even if it's 3 steps, my father has built like a makeshift ramp for me to actually access a property. Again, if it's 3 steps and under, I'm inside.
Okay. And then do you use, for those houses that you can't get into, I once met someone through one of Facebook groups and trying to get on my podcast. I haven't yet. But he said that he actually uses a drone with a camera. And this was right before the pandemic. Did things change during the pandemic for you?
When I tell you that the years of the pandemic were the best years in real estate that I had ever experienced, because for one, interest rates were nothing.
Yeah.
Interest rates were in the 2% and 3% realm, which they've never been in our lifetime. So I couldn't keep up with the amount of buyers that I had, and sellers had a field day, because a house that was $400,000 would sell for $500,000 or $600,000, because bidding wars were through the roof, and people would just pay astronomical price points because there was no houses available. So those were the best years of my real estate life, my real estate career, because people were coming out of the woodworks to buy property. But now it has slowed down so significantly because people are scarred on this side, because a lot of people like, maybe I should wait. I shouldn't do it now. And now their interest rates are where they are. They're looking like, now they're looking at oh man, I should have purchased when they were 2% and 3%, which I don't, unless something else happens along the lines of a COVID, I don't see those numbers ever coming back in our lifetime.
Yeah. So do you think that the virtual assistant makes things more accessible for realtors who are disabled or less?
Honestly, I love the approach that the gentleman took, the drone. That is absolutely a genius idea. And I love anybody that can think outside of the box like that. But what I did, I still don't drive yet. I do have my license again, but I'm not driving myself. So what I do is I study the floor plan upon going into the home. So I know bedrooms, bathrooms, I know the fixtures in the property. And then whenever they go in, I have my father take my phone inside so I can video chat these individuals, because I've researched the floor plan so well that I can still answer questions from an educated standpoint.
Do you have an opportunity to, though, have your grandfather do a video of the place before you talk to your clients? That way you have a visual cue, or you just do it based on the...
Strictly from the pictures.
Okay.
Strictly from the pictures, because like I said, now we're able to put so many pictures in the multiple listing service that, I mean, you have a lot of folks hire a photographer. Photographers are going to get the best angle. It's a big difference between point and click and just somebody pulling out their iPhone or their Android. So when pictures are done right, I can absolutely study those. I can look at the square footage of the property. So there's a lot that I can answer Again, I've been around this industry for 20 years now. I see something, I understand it enough to then be able to have a intelligent conversation with my prospective buyer.
Got it. Do you do any cold calls? Because I'm not a realtor, but I go in a neighborhood and I'll see like a one level house, like a wrap around ramp deck. And I'm thinking, man, if I was a realtor, I will wheel up there or do a cold call and making sure that individual knows that house is a prime house to sell to the disability community or to make it into a rentable vacation home because there's only like 1% of all houses on Airbnb and a few others that are accessible. Do you do any cold calls when you see houses and you're like, man, that would be a good house to sell to the disability community?
Honestly, that is a phenomenal idea. I do cold call, but to seek new clientele.
Yeah.
And actually, what you just spoke of was something that came up in the summit that I was a part of, the video that you saw. So many individuals do not know that they have an accessible home and that it's something that they can market. What you just said gave me an idea. So when I see these properties, I do need to let that individual know, hey, have your realtor put this in your listing so you can get additional eyes on this property that otherwise would not know that it exists.
Now, I mentioned earlier in our offline conversation, I've had other realtors out in selling universally designed homes on my podcast, and they say the same thing about there's just not this general understanding for marketability. But how do you think it should be marketed?
It should be marketed like, let's just take that home that you described. We should say that it's one level, that is stepless front entry. It has a wraparound porch. Those items alone, we can stamp as accessible because it gives you access to the entire perimeter of the home.
Mhm.
It is a stepless entry, so you won't need a ramp to be built. And all homes nowadays, the code is to have a 32-inch at least front door.
Yeah.
So you can market accessible just on those three points alone. So if a realtor had the knowledge, it's really about education. And that was the biggest point that I kept driving at the event. If everyone was educated and on the same page, if we had a course that was designated just for the limitation community, then realtors would know across the board, hey, this is what those individuals are looking for. And it starts with the court conversation. If there's a questionnaire that we can check off these boxes, then you feel there are questions that can be asked because the gentleman beside me, like I said, he's a para, and he said something that shook the entire room. Even I didn't think about it. He said, when it comes to bathrooms, it depends on how an individual gets on and off the toilet, because if it's a certain way and you have to slide on, if it's in a certain corner or tucked away a certain way, you can't utilize that bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had an individual on my podcast. She created a wet room because it was easier to get on the toilet. And she had a shower that was right next, and there was a handheld, and able-bodied could walk into the shower. But from the toilet, she can grab the hand shower and wash herself on the toilet. So she made the space a wet room. And she also did that simply because she had a very tiny home. And so the bathroom was not going to be super big to have a lot of separate individual things like you would in a traditional bathroom. So yeah, I could totally appreciate the layout of things with that. If you are trying to get education to realtors, how would you go about doing that? If you're an advocate and you're looking into either creating an educational company on that, or you're just an advocate and you want to be able to teach realtors, what kind of format and tools and connections do you need to get that to happen? And now a quick break from our sponsor. So as you can see and also hearing me, I am sitting on my back deck and I have my grill. I love being out in my back deck. I hate when I forget something and I have to wheel back into the house, particularly my cell phone. However, I'm excited to announce that another disabled owned business, Cush Pocket, has come up with a solution by creating this fabulous wheelchair bag. I love this bag and have been a proud customer since almost the very beginning. Why do I like it? One, it's huge. Two, it comes in multiple colors. But three, you can put it anywhere on the base of your wheelchair. How does that happen? It's attached to the flap and it has little Velcro. You put it directly underneath your cushion of your wheelchair. And the Velcro and the weight of your body ensures that this fabulous Cush Pocket bag it certainly will not move. I personally have two directly in front of me and it hides behind my legs, and I love that because it's so much more convenient. Trust me, you will never forget anything ever again. So as you can see down below, I have a direct link for Cush Pocket, and if you use my code Angela Fox, you will get $1 off. And not only will you get a fabulous bag, but you'll also support two disabled owned businesses, Cush Pocket and my business, Horizontal Houses. Check it out.
As a realtor, we are required every 4 years to take continuing education. I think that it should be mandatory in the continuing education that this be course set up individually. And reason being, there are close to 300,000 individuals that are newly injured every year. So if we compile that with the individuals that are born with the limitation, then you have a audience that realtors don't even know how to approach, because you don't want to say something that's politically not correct. You don't want to offend. So if we have the conversation in this classroom that is mandatory from each board of realtors across the United States, then you'll know these are the probing questions that I should ask. And the gentleman, like I said, shipped the room with that bathroom question with the way a person gets on and off the toilet. But when this lady said, how do you know what is and what's not offensive? And my response was, it depends on the capacity. If we're in the capacity of real estate setting where I'm trying to ask you the appropriate questions so I can make sure I'm finding the home that is absolutely you can completely maximize, then it's safe to say, how do you get on and off the toilet? Versus we being at a restaurant or us being at the ball field and you ask that type of question. It all depends on where you are and what type of question you're asking. So to answer your question, I think it should be a mandated course that is in every real estate board across the United States to educate these individuals, because in the group that I met you in, so many individuals that have questions about houses, my name floats around. Contact the Wheeltor. Look for Lamont. Lamont knows. So I'm really thankful that I started this on these platforms, because now they at least have someone that they can identify with.
Mhm.
Because again, a lot of things that are designed for the ADA community, you and I can tell that it was designed by able-bodied individuals.
And just to do a little bit deeper dive on that, so what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like it's not just tools, but also maybe coaching realtors on how to have that conversation with an individual, a client who may be disabled. When I'm talking to real afraid, I might be discriminating with by approaching that. And I've done a lot of reasonable accommodations working with employers, and they have a little bit of the same concept of they just don't know how to have that conversation. And they're afraid to ask questions, or if they can ask questions. And one thing I tell them in at least a reasonable accommodation at the workplace, which is significantly different than what we're talking about, but there is some similarity, is that if the individual themselves has identified themselves as disabled, then that kind of opens the door to have that conversation. Just if the topic, as you say, depends on where you're at. Are you in a restaurant or are you looking at a particular home? So it sounds like it's education of what universal design, but it's also coaching. Now, one thing I do get a lot of pushback because I asked some, I go, other than Zillow or Redfin, MLS listings, I said, are you reaching out to the disability community that you have this accessible house? And I said, because from my perspective, when I'm talking to the disability community, I have to be careful in the language I use simply because if I say housing, this is automatically jump. We'll talk about low income housing. If I say disability home ownership, I get no response or confusion. And so I literally had to say accessible real estate. Like I have learned as I'm doing group focused studies with the disability community. And I think it's because we really haven't been included in the conversation in as far as the real estate industry as a whole. And so I tell realtors, like, just because you build it doesn't mean that they will come if they don't know about it. And I'm an advocate kayaker. So I love kayaking. I go kayaking every Sunday with a group and I kayak about 2-3 miles. I'm in a wheelchair. We have people who are blind that kayak. It's a lot of fun right on the Potomac. But we have an adaptive pier. It's a pier that's on the water. It has a ramp with wheels and it has a bench that I can slide onto the bench and then do a dive into the kayak that's on the ramp. But are other adaptive piers throughout the country, but most of the time they don't advertise it. And I find that in a lot of like adaptive sports stuff, like they will make parks accessible and they say that the park's accessible, but they don't tell what it is. And even if they do on the website, they are not reaching out to Facebook groups that are like adaptive sports groups. If we don't know about it, then we're not going to come. It's not the fact that there isn't that purchasing power that you said earlier, which I absolutely love. It's just that we're not being reached out to. We are expected to go and hunt. And when there's so little availability in the first place, it's like, how often do people do that? Most people just deal with the circumstances that they're living in, their housing situation. But when I ask them, do they reach out? They get a little pushback and they'll say, I don't want to be accused of redlining. Are you familiar with that?
I am redlining and steering. You don't want to steer a person into a certain demographic, which I get it.
What's the workaround? Like, could you explain that a little bit to the audience? And I would love your perspective of like, how real is that? And if it is a real thing, what is the workaround? Because as an advocate, can't think that realtors can't reach out to the disability community. I just can't grasp that.
Again, it's all about the approach.
Okay.
I feel like, so if I call you and I say, hey, Miss Fox, I am a realtor and I have access to accessible homes. I'm going to have your interest piqued. You're not going to be offended by what I'm calling you about because I came to you and I'm catering to what I know is near and dear to your heart. So it's always about the approach. And like you said, we always have to scour the earth for things that are available for us. Instead of there being a central location, there's some type of website and then marketing dollars put behind it so the masses can know where it is. Because I'll be honest, the majority of the things that I stumble upon that is available for us, I just find it out of the blue. Like it literally just falls into my lap. Even though I've looked high and low, far and wide, 9 times out of 10, what I find falls into my lap because there is no central location. There is no marketing dollars put behind, hey, this is an accessible park here in Georgia. This is what this accessible park has to offer. Again, if you come to the people in the right way, no one is going to be offended.
What is behind redlining that is offensive?
Honestly, redlining dates back to the 40s and 50s. And it's a very dark past on the true meaning of redlining. And it was to separate one particular demographic from another demographic because they thought that the one demographic would taint the quote unquote better side of town. So that's initially where redlining came from. But in this instant, we're actually talking about steering. I want to steer you in a direction of, I think for you, which is very difficult. I never understand when people think for others, instead of just asking you, hey, or you coming to me and saying, I want a home.
Yes.
Now I'm intrigued. Wow, this individual is in a wheelchair and they want a home. I'm going to ask you a question or two because I know you're going to know more of what you want than me steering the conversation into what I think in my small mindset that I can't fathom because I'm able-bodied.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective because I do know the history
Mhm.
redlining about based on racism in a lot of ways. And so I guess from a legal perspective, because the disability community really hasn't been included in the real estate industry on multiple levels, to take what has been established for one particular demographic, we don't know one way or the other until honestly it's been tested and sometimes
Mhm.
vetted by the courts if necessary
Mhm.
to see if it applies to the disability community. And so I get that concern of, oh, I can't post that I have this accessible house on this disability Facebook group because then it will be redlining. And I'm just like, really? Like that just doesn't make sense. Well, how else are we supposed to know?
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense.
I
I
guarantee you for that first individual, that able-bodied realtor that takes the chance to post, hey, I have, and all they have to do is say something as simple as, hey, I have an accessible home, and sit back.
boom.
And the conversation will go from there. And if they have the mindset, then they'll sit back and they'll take everything that they read and they'll formulate a way to approach those individuals.
Do you think there is a market for marketing accessible houses as far
Absolutely.
as like providing even templates on for Facebook posting of accessible houses? If you give the people the tools and all they have to do is plug and play, whatever that might be, they're willing to accommodate you. And so I'm just
Well,
wondering along that line in the real estate industry if you feel like that's also possible.
you know what I just envision? I'm a visual person. So
Yeah.
when people say things, I grab it out of the air and I build it as we're speaking. So what came to mind when you said that, you know how you can go online and you can build your vehicle? Why can't we do the same thing for housing? You
Yeah.
know what you need and you want in your home. All you have to do is just have A through Z, what accessible means and what each person can grab and make their own. And you can build your home that way. Print it out, take it to the developer, and they have the fortitude to understand and build it based upon that. And you go that way. This can really be simple. Again, it's just not enough individuals that has been faced with this that want to take that chance.
In your business, how many other individuals with disabilities that are realtors? Do you know? Uh,
You know, one of the gentlemen here in the Atlanta market that is a Wheeltor,
okay. Okay.
right? But what I love to do is even in those groups, I ask individuals, hey, who's interested in being a real estate agent?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I would love to see us assist us.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. One thing that's been percolating on my mind, and that is, as we're talking, is how can we build our own community within the real estate
Mhm.
industry? How do we recruit other individuals to be who are disabled to become realtors themselves? Almost like building a school or a course of here are the tools. So I interview a woman, Realtors for Change, and she's started a course on trying to get realtors to work with nonprofits by selling donated real estate. And so that's why I'm just wondering if we could build our own community of realtors
Mhm.
by creating courses and recruitment opportunities and campaigns.
Well, first of all, I would love to say what you're doing for the community is so far ahead of the game because the platform that you have and the topics in which you speak upon is step one.
Thank-
That's taking the word to the people. That's bringing individuals that are in the situation so they can speak on their personal experience. So what you're doing is far ahead of what anyone else is doing. Two, the videos that I shoot when I'm going in and out of properties, that's another way in which, again, I see so many conversations of individuals say, oh my God, now that I'm in this children, what type of work that I can do? You can sell property. It's things that we can do. We just have to remix it.
Yeah, yeah. I do a lot of mentorship because I've been disabled my whole life, so
Okay.
42 years. And it was 8 years before the passing of the ADA, so I had to crawl into bathrooms
Mm.
and things like that. So
Wow.
I do know where we came from in that
Yeah.
regards. But when I do mentorship for individuals who are new to the community, I will say we need to show people that there are realtors showing houses, right?
Mhm.
We need to champion those people who are the housing developers. We need to champion politicians like in my PG county and really figure out a way to just bring all that together.
Like I said, change doesn't start. It's a trickle down effect. And
Hmm.
in my opinion, it starts at the top with legislation. And then that's when it's going to be forced. And then at that point, everyone will gather around the movement and
Hmm.
figure out a way to make it make sense to the masses.
I got a question though. Are you a member of the National Realtor Association?
Yeah, NAR here in Atlanta, yes, ma'am. I am.
Okay. So I know they're going through a lot of change from recent lawsuits as far as commission goes. I've been watching that from a legal beagle perspective. Does the NRA have a subcommittee for realtors who are disabled?
You already know the answer to that. Again, the lack of attention to the disability community, it really blows my mind. It takes individuals like yourself and myself that will be advocates for the voiceless.
Hmm.
So it takes the conversation. And like I said, I speak at so many realtor events and they love what I say. They love the message. They really enjoy it. And again, after it, they come up to me, oh my God, Lamont this, oh my God, Wheeltor that. But it fizzles out, I guess, on the drive home. The all moment goes away in 25 or 85, depending on whatever highway they go
Yeah.
on. Again, because it does not fall at your front door. If you're not faced with something, you have no idea, because I told the story. I was at the Piedmont Hospital the day before my accident. I had no idea that Piedmont Hospital was attached to the Shepherd Center. I didn't know what the Shepherd Center was. But the next day, I found out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. How receptive do you think the NRA would be to take a hard look or campaign to even survey their population to see how many realtors have a disability?
Honestly, I think to save face, I think that they would jump all over the opportunity.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because I've been asking realtors, and I know it's a touchy subject with the lawsuits,
Mhm.
but I see an opportunity because now commissions are not just set in stone.
Right.
And I also know that millennials are slowly getting into the real estate business, not as much as the baby boomers. Are still a huge worlds away. But
Mhm.
I tell people that when Redfin and Zillow came, they got attacked by the NRA. So I actually researched about the upcoming of Zillow and Redfin, and the
Mhm.
NRA actually went after them. And there was a lawsuit, and DOJ said, no, you don't have to be a member of the brokers, don't have to be a member of the NRA. And that allowed Zillow and Redfin to eventually become what they do. And the reason why I bring that up is that millennials and Gen Z, we rely on Redfin and Zillow as our go-to.
Mhm.
We don't find a realtor first. We look usually at Zillow and Redfin to preliminarily educate what houses are out there. And then we'll say, oh, I want to go see this house and that house. And then you find a realtor. But that didn't exist until Redfin and Zillow come up. And I know that, especially with millennials who saw a lot of their parents losing their homes during the housing crash
Mhm.
and things like that, that I've read a study that millennials, they don't really care for realtors. They rather go on Redfin and Zillow. They're not loyal like the parents where they work on with one realtor to go. It's just I'll make an appointment and see this house. I don't really need a realtor. And with the lawsuits of the commission not being said, I think realtors, like your opinion, are going to have to really more market themselves, at least especially to the younger generation, and have some kind of expertise of what I'm bringing to the table. This is why you still need a realtor. And by the way, this is why now I could charge this particular commission. And I think disability home ownership is one of those ways to do that.
I agree. And just to go back to what you mentioned about NAR not liking Zillow and Redfin, old money does not like new rules.
Yep. And that's what it's all about.
And the fact that these kids, per se, just speaking of the age of Zillow and Redfin, the nerve of you to come into our arena and change things. The industry doesn't like disruptors. And what they came in is they disrupted. And like you said, millennials don't trust because they've seen what their families have gone through. Realtors have such a negative name in the industry, would consider you as car salesmen.
Yeah. And I'll be perfectly honest. In my book, I end up buying my house directly with the owner because I had such a bad experience with realtors.
And just like anything else, you're going to have a bad apple in every bunch. I don't care what arena you play in. You know, what I try to do is I release into the universe what I expect in return. So I'm going to give you my best because I'm expecting your best. And if I don't know what answer to something, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to say I'm an expert, even with 20 years in the industry. If you don't evolve, you're doomed to fail.
Yeah. But you know what? I think, though, if I had met you, who is a disabled person, and like your whole brand is Wheeltor, oh my God, like that, you would have been my realtor. And I think that's the point, is that in the disability community, the loyalty would be fierce because it's just not out there. And so I know, oh my God, it's just a mere fact. You look like me. Therefore, I know you are going to be looking at things in the same lens, and I don't have to explain as much as I would in an able-bodied community. Even if our disabilities have different symptoms and we have different things that we may need, especially if you knew, like, the person who designed the house was a person who's disabled, the disability community would just be all over that.
Wouldn't it be amazing if the architect possibly had a disability, then the developer, then the realtor, then the attorney, that whole community, like you said, it goes back to if we build it and then the community is there for us, built by us and utilized by us.
How is your experience with advertising through Zillow? I know you briefly earlier in this conversation said there's that one box that's accessibility.
I don't utilize the Zillows or the Redfins. I really go to social media because if I'm going to spend, and there's no knock to Zillow or Redfin, but if I'm going to utilize my marketing dollars, I want to be able to control the narrative.
So we say control the narrative. Why can't you control your narrative when you're advertising Zillow, Redfin for the audience? Probably they really understand what you mean by that.
Because what I mean, you have such limited things that you can check off for the accessible community on your Zillows and your Redfins. But when I say control the narrative, that means I can shoot a video of me going in and out of a house. And I can put that on Facebook and I can generate a marketing campaign around that. And people know exactly what I do. And if the right individuals at my disability, again, when I do something for the community, I go to the community with it. So they'll see, wow, he's doing it. I had no idea that we can do that.
One last question is, as far as appraisal value goes, so this is just something I ask everybody because I'm on this crusade to find it. And that is, again, follow the money. I have not been able, how financially the return on investment is there in universally designed homes. So I'm on the hunt for an appraiser, a home appraiser, who has experience in evaluating universal design houses. Do you know anybody?
I do not.
Okay.
But what I would speak to on that very point, value is determined by what you and I are determined to spend on. Okay? With that being said, appraisers, no knock to my appraisers, brothers and sisters, please don't be offended by what I'm getting ready to say. But it literally says an estimate or an guesstimate on their report.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Who really truly determines value?
Oh, and I agree with that. But I even did a test on my house, and I didn't mention anything would be accessible. And a lot of things, because it's universal design, the appraiser didn't even know it was a universal design house. And then when I mentioned it, they're like, it doesn't stand out, so it's not going to take away from the home. I'm like, okay, but how can that be a benefit? And they really didn't know. I've reached out to a couple appraising schools, and are you teaching about how to appraise a universal design home? And I know you're not shocked by it. I don't get a response, or the answer is no.
The interesting part in that is when you determine value of a property, when you're doing modifications or renovations, I guess I should say, in this point, to add value when you're getting ready to exit that home, you spend your money in kitchens and bathrooms anyway. Kitchens, bathrooms, and closets is where you get your biggest return. So if in that renovation, you say, hey, I renovated this and it's also accessible, that's an addition, that's an added bonus to what you're already doing. So it can't devalue it, it can only increase it because, again, you spent money in the renovation, but if it also crosses that border of being accessible, you just put an additional set of eyes on that property that originally would not have been there.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said renovation, because what I started to find out just by talking to the disability community and then realtors is that the disability, and I'm guilty of it too, but the disability community tends to say modifications. But when you say that from a realtor perspective that I've been talking to, that is, you're doing something specific to the house that the average person would see a upscale value to it. And so you have to, that's what I was going to ask you. So it's a word, should we still use renovation even when we're talking about the fact that we modify something that's universal design?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. If you are going into a home to make it livable for yourself, then it's modifying it for you. If you're exiting that home to renovate, to increase value, to sell, you're renovating at that point. So it all depends. I still think that you should utilize both words, but you just should utilize them in the correct capacity.
Because then if you modify, that means you already own the home. And in the context of selling, it's important. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for clarifying that. Because I find that those two words are viewed differently by different communities. So, okay. All right. So I guess if you want to get involved in the advocacy, what resources could you share with the audience?
Honestly, I would say if you have access to architects, if you have access to developers, if you have access to contractors, if you are a lender yourself, start looking for products that, they're not readily available. Create that loan product that is just for the disability community. Like I said, everywhere I go, I always speak about my veterans. Hats off to the services that they provided, because we are free because of what they dedicated their lives to. I just want something to run adjacent to what they do. I want to parallel what they do because, again, it's not there. And I feel like the mold does not have to be created. All we have to do is just mirror and just label it as a disability. So that way, only a person with the disability will have access to it. So it starts, if you know a congressman, if you know a city official, start championing for the community to these individuals, or as they're running, ask the question, what are you doing for the disability community? How can we parallel with you to get our word out there so the masses will understand what we go through in the dark?
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that.
Again, Ms. Fox, I am so elated that our paths crossed when they did. The stars perfectly aligned. And now we have this masterpiece that we can further the conversation with our community and beyond.
Well, thank you so much. And let's expand the Wheeltor experience to everyone. HorizontalHouses.com is the hub for all things related to disability home ownership. You will find my blog, this podcast, my book, and how my consulting services can help real estate agents or housing developers market and tap into the largest minority group, the disability community. Please help me continue this exploration of disability home ownership by connecting through my Facebook page. Remember, sharing our collective experiences will allow us each to lower the kitchen sink but raise the bar for disability home ownership. Thank you.